You know, a lot of the projects fizzled and a lot of the proffers went away. Who's picking up the tab? We are. I don't really think we have a budgetary problem. And you guys have heard this before. I don't really think that we have a revenue problem. I think we have a spending problem. The only way that we can kind of get a hold of what's going on with us this year, next year, and the following years is to plan for what we're going to do. Sit down and look at how we're going to get there. And if we have to make some cuts, make some cuts. If you have to raise the tax, raise the tax. But make sure it's for the right stuff. Because you can't keep dipping in the well. You can't keep coming back and say, well, we forgot about this a couple of years ago. It's coming back now. That won't fly at the bank. Not on my truck payments. Not on my insurance payments. I can't use that excuse. Okay? Small businesses in this community, we carry the load. When all these places go away, the projects that fizzle, all the stuff that was given away. We gave away the store, Remuda, State Fair, Virginia. And over and over and over again. They're gone. We're still here. Who's going to pick up the tab? We are. The citizens of this community deserve better. They need better. And we have to perform better. There's no excuse for doing what we're doing today. There's no excuse for talking about the way we're talking about some of this stuff. You know, it's bad financial discipline. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm Bonnie Cannon from Mr. Seeley's Bowling Green District. I come to you again tonight, but tonight I come on your tax public hearing. I am definitely opposed to any tax increases this fiscal year. My taxes went up substantially last year because of my grossly over-assessed property. And until the county gets the over-assessed properties assessed equalized, I wouldn't mind paying a few cents increase in my taxes. But until that happens, I am definitely opposed to any zero tax increases. Thank you.
Next speakers are George Spinner, Nancy and Don Filsoof, and Donald Shores.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Spinner, and I reside in the Mattaponi District. Found this the other day, and I thought I'd bring it and show it to you. It's from the Progress, last April 21st edition. It says, tax rate going up to 68 cents. Supervisors hike rate 15 cents, 4 cents higher than the equalized rate. Now, I don't know what happened to all that money that you raised taxes on last year, but I just really don't understand how you feel like you can raise the taxes again this year, 4 cents, and in addition, another, what I believe is 15% increase in the personal property tax. The only point I'm trying to make here is many of the people who live in this county are living on very fixed incomes. Many people haven't gotten raises in a while. Many people who live on retirement or whatever haven't been getting appropriate raises either. And we just don't have endless deep pockets to keep funding all the things that you all want to fund in this county. So I would just ask you to please take a real good look at what you're trying to do here and at the tax rate. I understand that these have just been proposed rates, but I do think you need to really take a good look at what's being funded and maybe what you might be able to cut even further to keep the tax rates where they are. Thank you very much.
I think we got our name on 2 different lists. We already spoken, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Next speaker is Donald Shores, followed by Charles Hamill and Rhonda Harrell. I'm sorry. Donald Shores, not here. Charles Harrell and Rhonda Harrell, followed by Sam Meggs.
I'm Charles Harrell from the Port Royal District, and again, I think we need to raise the taxes to pay for the stuff you've already spent. And one thing that bothers me a lot is to know that you're limited to how far you can raise them because the county administrator has already advertised how far you can go. Now, I want to know who's in charge here. Is it us, the people, through our representatives, or is the county administrator who's hired? I would like to think that we need to raise the taxes as high as it needs to pay for the things you've already spent. Those projects over the last 20 years that have put us from having some type of rainy day fund, which I remember in the 90s was somewhere around here. Now we're $127 million in debt. We need to pay for that stuff by raising the taxes to whatever you can get it up there so that we can pay for what we already spent. So please look at what you can do. Cut, like I said before, the budget, but at the same time raise the taxes, but divert that money not to new programs, but to paying down the debt.
Good evening again, gentlemen and lady, and Rhonda Harrell, Port Royal District. I brought along with me tonight some gift cards. They're for $100 each, and there's one for each one of you. But this is a one-time gift. It is for this school board, this meeting only. Would you expect it for next meeting, or the one after that, or the one after that, or a year from now? No. Years of unbridled spending and reliance on grants, a one-time gift, have resulted in an exorbitant debt in our county. We need an immediate solution. We need to be sure that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a freight train heading straight at us. Gentlemen and lady, it is not pleasant, nor is it popular, to do what is absolutely necessary to reduce this debt. Yes, it will be harsh. There will be a hardship on those who have lost their jobs, who have a fixed income, or who have large families. But we need a fix now. And we need to make sure that this debt is paid down so that we are not looking at it for years and years and years to come. If it takes a higher tax rate to do this in a temporary format, then that's what I am all in favor of. Not a permanent sort of thing, but to do something temporary to help us to get this county back on solid ground. And by the way, these are not really gift cards.
Next speaker is Sam Meggs, followed by Catherine Meggs and Stephen Swan. Stephen Swan, Melissa Lewis.
Good evening, Melissa Lewis, Bowling Green District. I would like to say that tax increases are necessary for the county to continue to operate and provide services for its citizens, but they are necessary for necessary services, such as public schools and emergency services. If we have a 4-cent tax increase to be used on debt incurred by public utilities, that is unacceptable. We should be considering other avenues, such as sanitation districts, that would be cost-effective and ease $46 million in debt. If we put our 4 cents tax increase towards public schools, we will be investing and, in the end, creating more tax revenue. We need to invest in our public schools in order to raise our personal property values and educate our children and put money back into the county. Thank you.
Final speaker on the list is Linda Keith.
Linda Keith, Bowling Green. Earlier tonight you heard about the food banks and how many people are receiving their subsidies. You're asking to increase our taxes again while frivolously spending. If you're going to increase my taxes, I expect it to go to the schools, and I expect it to go to the EMS. If it goes anyplace else, I won't approve of it. If I have anything to say, and if any of these people behind me have anything to say, and you're going to listen to what we have to say, you need to listen long and hard. You need to understand that we're not here because we want to increase our taxes. We're not here because we want to spend money that we don't have. And we're certainly not here to fund projects that are useless, like the YMCA. We are here because it is more important to these people in this building to have good schools for our children so that when they grow up, they can fund this community. They can build businesses out here. They can make this community better than what it is now. And I'll be quite honest, people look at Caroline County and laugh. This county might have been something good in the past, but when people come here and they look at where you are, they laugh. And I don't think any one of you want that legacy. I don't think any one of you want to be laughed at because of what decisions you have made. Thank you.
You've heard Mr. Pardon indicate this is the last speaker that's listed on the list. However, I will give anyone one last opportunity. If you wish to come and speak concerning this proposed tax rate, please come forward, state your name and your voting district.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisors, Mr. Chairman. I was born and raised in this county, and it ain't all been down, and it ain't all been up. People come to Caroline County because they like Caroline County. People stay in Caroline County because they like Caroline County. And if you want to die in Caroline County, you better live here. Now, I'll tell y'all, you 6 supervisors sitting up there, along with that fellow over there, you just said, Mr. Akers, if you funded them 5 firefighters, $400,000, that's $80,000 apiece to start with. They don't need $80,000.
And I was incorrect on the number. I apologize for that. I think it's what, 257. I was incorrect on the number.
Well, thank
257.
You. That do sound a little better.
Yes.
But why do the fire chief need $100,000 a year when half of the people in Caroline County is living on probably $40,000 and $50,000? That's what I live on. Not even that much. But why do these people, y'all need to give the commissioner, the treasurer, the sheriff, every one of them officers, all of this money? They don't need it. It's good to have it, but we are in tight times. I don't know if y'all came up, I'm sure all, maybe except that one over there, knew what it was like in World War II when there was only a little soup to eat in the 40s, the early 40s. Now, you know, y'all don't, this money don't come out y'all's pocket. Y'all try to help us out. Now, I'm against raising taxes, but if you would raise mine $10, I could afford it. But when you're talking about raising the $200, that's a whole lot of money for me. Now, I appreciate it if y'all would think about that.
Thank you, Neil. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
That was Bert Upshaw from Bowling. Chenal, I'm sorry. And Mr. Chenal, just so you know, it was poor in the 70s too, not just the 40s. And to be frank, it's still poor.
Seeing no other people wishing to speak at the public hearing, we will now declare this public hearing closed on the calendar year tax rates.
Okay.
I want to make two comments after this public hearing as well. One has to do with the utility fund. I have advocated, and I've said I would support, if we talk about enterprise funds, and the utility fund is a enterprise fund, there's no question. If we want to make the enterprise fund self-sustaining, then certainly you are able or should be able to use the funds that's generated because of that enterprise that you have invested in raises revenue. If we look at the amount of revenue that is raised strictly in the business community, in the Carmel Church area and in the Ladysmith area only, where the water and the sewer is located, you're talking about in excess of $3 million. Now, if the county is able to transfer some of that $3 million from the general fund to the enterprise fund.
Mr. Akers, this is not a lecture time.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Akers, we're going to talk about enterprise fund. No, Mr. Chairman, you're going to lecture. Then it's time for the rest of us to say something too. So if it's public comment,
Mr. Seeley, you're out of order.
Comment.
You're out of order. You're out of order. I'm only making a point. It was mentioned about the enterprise fund, the utility fund. And I'm making a point that, yes, if we're able to transfer funds, then let's do that. And we can do that. The second item is the YMCA. There's no place in this budget within the 4-cent increase that has been proposed by the county administrator that includes any funds for the YMCA. None whatsoever. Not one penny of the tax increase nor any expenditures are in the general fund budget for the YMCA. So let's please take those two items off of the table, if you would. Okay? The next item on the agenda is going to be the proposed utility system rates for fiscal year 2012-2013.
Good evening, Mr. Akers, members of the board. Your fourth public hearing tonight is to amend the Caroline County Ordinance, specifically Section 93-1, the Caroline County Water and Sewer Code as they relate to the schedule of water and sewer fees. These fees have been proposed to be increased by 5% across the board. It also includes the deposits to be raised by $15 each for water and sewer. And it also extends the water and sewer availability deadline for existing residential structures from the April 30th deadline to the September 30th, 2012, to encourage current owners to connect to the system that otherwise would not. This public hearing has been advertised in accordance with the Code of Virginia, and with that I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Board, have any questions of Mr. Schiebel? Mr. Black?
Joe, what are our water rates in comparison to other localities, or do you have that data?
As far as our water rates, we're probably in the 65th percentile for water rates. Sewer rates, we're probably in the 89th to 91st percentile.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just because I'm a numbers guy, 85th percentile is the 85th lowest or 85th highest?
We are the 80, it'll be the 89 to 91% highest for sewer.
So our water rates are higher than 89% of the other, our sewer rates are 89% higher, or higher than 89% of other localities.
In the state of Virginia.
And then subsequently, our water rates are
around the 60 percentile.
60% higher
Yeah,
than
we're
most
about,
other
we're about,
localities.
it's about even keel. 50% is even, so we're above about where the majority of the localities are in the state of Virginia.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood the use of percentiles. Thank you.
Now, if you use those percentiles in a different manner and compare us to other utilities of like size, we are probably above, probably around the 65th percentile for sewer, and we're probably around the 40th percentile for water. So we're actually, when you compare us to like-size utilities, you know, we're pretty much even where we should be. It's hard to compare us to utilities that have 20,000 customers and a 5% increase over 20,000 customers compared to a 5% increase over 752 water customers. It doesn't go very far, so it's definitely a big difference.
Okay, one more question, please, if I may. Mr. Schiebel, this proposed increase would generate how much revenue?
$107,000.
$107,000 with this proposed increase?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Shevel, I saw that a 5% increase somewhere in the budget was $225,000 or $30,000, and I guess that was one of my questions: is what is the real rate increase?
Yeah, I don't have that in my packet here, and I looked to Fran when she gave me that number. She's going to look real quick and verify that number.
While she does that, part of this rate increase is to offset the cost of the new wells we dug?
That's correct. We've just turned the Carmel Church Green Sand Filter project online about 6-7 weeks ago. The hotels seem to be really happy. They don't want to declare victory quite yet because they're still hesitant, but they said they have seen a marked improvement in their water quality and are happy if it stays like it is right now. So Kathy Beard with the tourism department has been keeping their ear to the ground and contacting them, and they seem to be very pleased with that right now. So we do have that. We also have the additional expenditures of the 3 new wells and the green sand filters that are trying to target to be online towards the end of April of this year.
And that number was like $3 million, what we invested?
It was actually originally $1.8 million. We ended up bringing that in-house and doing most of that in-house of just around $1 million.
Okay, so that was for the new wells and the green sand filters.
That's correct.
It was $1 million.
That's correct. And Mr. Seeley, the budget number is $104,794.
Okay.
Do you know where his $230-some thousand comes from?
No, I can get with him and try to figure out where that
He
is.
probably
It is in the budget. I didn't bring the budget with me, but in 2 places it's one number then another number. In one place it says 5% is $230-some thousand, another place it's 104. Is that water and sewer?
Yes, it is.
Can't be right, no, because they don't.
104 is the water and sewer. 104 is the water and sewer.
That's correct.
I have a question on one of the way that we're talking about increasing. We're talking about increasing usage rates by 5%.
That's correct.
How about the minimum? Is that being increased by 5% as well?
That's correct. The minimum base fee, as we call it, is you pay that whether you use water or not. That's going up by 5%, as well as each of the 4 individual tiers is going up by 5%.
My question is that really encouraging people to not use water? If we say if you use no water at all, or 1,000 gallons of water, your bill is going to be $15 or $20, whatever the number is. But as the water usage goes up, the rate per 1,000 increases or decreases?
The rate per 1,000 actually gets higher. So your first tier, 0 to 4,000, is proposed at $1.45 for water. Between 4,000 and 8,000, you go to $1.74. And then between 8,000 and 10,000, it goes to $4.05 per 1,000. And then for the people that typically irrigate and trying to help preserve water, the last tier is from 10,000 gallons and above will be $4.63. So as you use more water, your bill continues to increase as you hit those higher tiers.
How about if you use, let's just say you use 1,000 gallons. Are you saying the rate's going to be $1.45?
If you used 1,000 gallons, you would pay your base fee.
Which is?
Your base fee proposed will be
Well,
15 something.
that's the base water and meter, 1621.
Yeah.
And then tier 1 water is 145. Right.
So if you use 500 gallons, you pay
1621 plus
1621 is the base fee, and then you'll pay $1.45 for that 1,000 gallons. Then you also have an administrative fee that'll be 53 cents, as well as a capital asset fee that will be $1.05.
Is that new into this particular?
The increase is, but the capital asset fee was new last year, as well as the administrative fee.
My question is, and I don't know, I'm asking, would it be better to look at increasing the capital cost fee, look at increasing some of those other fees rather than the base fee. I just think we need to try to encourage people to use as least amount of water as they can, since we do have some water issues in the county. So is it better for us to increase some of those other charges to make up the lost revenue?
No, it's really not. If you look at the customers across the base, when you've got such a small base of customers, you know, when you raise that base fee by 753 customers, it doesn't go very far. Or 756, 53. When you raise that, it doesn't go very far. But when you start getting the people that are using 8,000 or 10,000, I mean, we've got customers during the summer that easily use 30 to 50,000 gallons, and there's a lot more revenue in that than there would be of just raising that fee.
Would it be better to increase the usage fee rather than, again, that
That's correct.
basic
The usage
fee is what
fee.
I'm concerned about, that we keep bumping up.
Yeah, the base fee, it's better to increase the usage fee. You get more bang for your buck, I guess, because the more that you use, the higher that rate would go. Where your base fee, it's a flat fee. That's what you'll always collect, and that wouldn't change. So it definitely encourages you to save money in the tiered system.
So is that something we maybe want him to look at, is to look at increasing, instead of by 5%, look at increasing by 6% or 7%, or whatever that number would be, in the usage amount fees rather than in the base fee? You increase the base fee by 5%. So
that's correct.
It's now $16.21. So the old fee was what, 15 something?
Yeah, we don't have old versus new in our packet.
The old fee was $16.21.
It would be 95% or whatever, 16.21 in my phone.
Their current rate is $15.44.
Okay, so we're going from 15.44 to 16.21. I'm just wondering if we would not generate more revenue if we did not look at increasing the usage.
Well, it definitely, if you would increase that 7-8% compared to the 5% on the base fee, it would generate more revenue.
You said the old fee. You said the old fee was 15.40.
15.44.
Doesn't add up. Doesn't add up, but that's okay. Mr. Schiebel, I wanted to ask another question. Now we're talking. Mr. Akers was talking about the single user fees. I'm a little bit interested in the bulk user fee.
Okay.
And that is going up only 5%?
Yeah, the bulk fee that we use when we issue a permit, you pay for a permit to get a bulk permit. That's $25 per month. And every month that's renewed, and then we charge you for the water that you use, and that is $10 per thousand is what we charge for that.
So it would be, well, let me just finish the math here. It would be smarter if our ordinance allowed it for me to have 10 people buying water in bulk as opposed to 10 individual users.
The bulk water system set up, and it's used for transports, people that are buying water that are coming in. It requires more time of ours of issuing permits, keeping up with the readings, checking these trucks as they're inspecting the trucks, inspecting them as they're on our hydrants. So we charge a larger fee because they're serving the paving companies and the companies cleaning ditches and filling swimming pools.
Well, I mean, mine is somewhat hypothetical, but you and I know of a real case. Let's just say I live in Belmont.
Okay.
I pay individually for that water.
That's correct.
Let's say our ordinance allowed me to put all the people in Belmont together and say, we're going to buy bulk water. It would be cheaper if I bought bulk water in that situation. Right?
That would be under a commercial rate. Our commercial rates are currently for your Campbell's Creek subdivision, we provide sewer for. Your Glen Meadows Trailer Park, we provide water to. Your Lake Caroline, we provide water to, and charge them their fee based on the meter capacity. Caroline Pines, they'll be individually billed. There is more revenues to generate when you bill individually than if you were to build through a master meter, because they're a one user and you're paying for that. The positive is if you only have one, you're not maintaining the rest of that distribution system. You're only maintaining to that meter, so then you don't have the hydrant flushing, you don't have the maintenance and repairs, connections that are happening within that system. As far as, let's take Lake Caroline, we're currently providing that service. If there's a new home built in there, we don't collect an availability fee. We don't even see that. Where the benefit was is every home that would be built, if that was our system, such as Caroline Pines, we would then charge an $8,000 availability fee that would go towards debt service.
Mr. Shebel,
Yes, sir.
Lake Caroline is a sanitary district, correct?
There is a sanitary district set up for that. Right now, they are a commercial customer, and we provide water to them.
But they are set up as a sanitary district.
There is a sanitary district. Right now, we provide water to the Ladysmith Water
Can we
Company.
assess each individual residence in there as a sanitary district customer to recoup some of our capital cost?
I would think we would. I'd have to check with Ann Neal, but that's already set up, and there's already a board there, and I think we can assess each of the individual lots in there.
Well, that was for what? For what are you going to assess them for?
I'm just answering the question.
For capital cost.
The problem is the fact that the sanitary district is not an active sanitary district. It is there by name only. It is not providing any service to the people of Lake Caroline. The sanitary district is not.
What prevents us from activating that, since we're now providing a capital cost expenditure from the county to those residents? What prevents us from making that a sanitary district and enacting a board to assess a monthly fee for our capital cost for utilities?
I don't think there's anything that would prevent that from happening. I mean, as Mr. Aker said, I mean, there's one that's been established, but it hasn't been activated. So the process, we'd have to go back, and we've discussed looking at that. But
would the sanitary district not have to provide some type of service to the citizens of Lake Caroline in order to be assessed the charge? What are you going to be assessing the charge for?
Capital cost.
Capital cost for what?
For the new wells I had to dig.
No, that is, if you're going to do anything, you would assess additional charges against the commercial company that we were selling to.
See, that's, and I think we've discussed that, though. That's Caroline. I don't want to necessarily have a middleman mark up our costs. I'm charging $10. The middleman will say, okay, well, for me doing nothing, I'll charge them $12. Each resident is then hurt twice. I think there needs to be some sense of equity in the payments as far as they're concerned, so that those who are paying individually don't feel like they're bearing more of the weight than those who are, because of the ordinance amendment came afterwards, get a bulk rate. If that's the case, I'm going to run a bulk rate on Milford Street and see what I can do. Well, when you ever get water there. But I mean, you could do that.
There is one thing we were looking to do next year to generate some additional revenues without really affecting the rate, and that's adjusting your commercial rate tiers. In other words, when I said 0 to 4,000, tier 1, that was for a residential connection. If you were to look at a 4-inch connection, you then go from...
Mr. Shebel, can we go back to the sanitary district?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to finish that topic before we move on. So can we look at what if we actually could create a sanitary district in Lake Caroline for the services that we're providing, for the capital costs that we're incurring as a county, so that we're not, because if we increase the cost of water to Lake Caroline, all we're doing is increasing the cost to the owner, who then marks it up an additional 15 or 20% to collect it. If we can make them a sanitary district and assess individual houses, we don't have to make their water bill go anyplace. We can leave their water bill where it is. Right. And that would facilitate everybody in the loop.
And we cut the middleman out. We don't allow the middleman, who is, according to Lake Caroline, abusing them beyond belief. We are basically saying, you're getting this benefit. We just spent X millions of dollars digging new wells. You need to help pay for that, because we were giving you water on an emergency basis for 8 years now.
It's been a long time.
That's a long emergency.
It's been 3.5 years.
3.5, 8, same thing to me. Anyhow, I know how to make them work in my favor. Anyhow, the point is, though, I had to dig. I would not necessarily have had to spend that extra $1 million on new wells if I were not providing emergency water to someone.
That's correct.
So I'm all for that. I mean, I voted for Caroline Pines. I was a proponent to get them water. I felt they deserved it. I was a proponent to get water to Lake Caroline on a emergency basis. I know how temporary turns to permanent. All I'm saying is there's got to be some sense of fairness to make sure everybody pays their way.
Right. Like I was saying, one of the things we're looking to do is adjusting the tiers. When you get to a 4-inch meter, it goes instead of from 0 to 4,000, it goes from like 0 to 100,000.
But I heard what you said, though. You
so
said
I
next
can
year.
Adjust those down. It affects all the commercial customers, even the hotels, and it was hard to justify us to change those and start charging all of our commercial customers that additional rate that use a lot of water until we took care of the water quality issue. Now that we've invested those funds, we're putting out a quality of water. Next year we were looking to target those numbers to try to generate more revenue from the users as you have defined as a bulk user or a very large user, which would start impacting them, which really would impact Lake Caroline.
See, I don't want to be like their middleman.
Right, and I understand.
I don't want to just abuse them, but I want to be fair to everybody because I've got a lot of constituents that I represent who are talking about their water bills.
Right.
And they have friends that live in other communities, and they're saying, well, my bill is X. And they're saying, why am I paying this much? We're getting the same water. So I'm just trying to be fair.
Absolutely.
That's all.
The only thing that I think on the sanitary district Ann's really going to have to look at is the sanitary district, the funds that are generated within the sanitary district have to stay within there. So as we haven't physically done anything in there, we need to be careful if we can expend that money outside of that district. That's a legal question.
No. Part of what I invested, the $1 million or so for new wells, they're getting some of that water, right?
That's correct.
What percentage of that water are they getting?
But you're not giving that right now. You're providing that against the water company.
Work with me, please.
I understand.
What percentage of that water are they getting? This is the last question. What percentage of that water are they getting?
Probably 20 to 22%. They average about 210,000 gallons a day.
Whatever that percentage is, there should be a debt service set-off. And all we do is say to the sanitary district, we invested $1 million, your fee is $220,000.
Right.
Break it up whichever way you want to, but that's what you owe. Otherwise, other people are paying for all of that debt service. That's all it is.
I understand.
Just want to be fair.
I understand. I mean, it would be in our favor to take the system over and run that as a utility system as part of the county system. You would then have 950 additional customers instead of one. So your 5% then goes over 950 instead of over one.
But I can't do that.
Now, I understand, but it would be a benefit.
I think these are discussions that we need to have as a board at another time. It has nothing to do with the rate structure that we're talking about today. No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that when we talk about a sanitary district, when we talk about next year's numbers. We're looking at
one last question. Is Caroline Pines going to be its own utility district?
We will have a separate service district, but it will not be a sanitary district.
But it'll be a separate service district.
That's
It'll take
correct.
on its own debt, and they're going to pay back. They're going to pay for their utilities.
There will be the time to be able to take on debt to take care of any of the improvements that need to happen within Caroline Pines.
Including the money that's initially being spent that we're running the water system out there.
If you look at everything in the models right now, and even when we've used the numbers reducing that drastically, the user fees that we will be collecting from them will pay for the water as well as all of the O&M and debt with the existing customers in there under the current rate structure. So anything that's done to maintain, upgrade any of the lines within the boundaries, we would then assess a fee to start upgrading those.
So, but we do have the ability to assess a fee at like year 7 like we talked about.
We do not today. We've got a future first reading coming up, the meeting after next, I believe.
Okay.
And then that will hopefully be put in place.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question, please? Mr. Chairman. May I ask a question, please? Okay. Are there commercial developments or businesses in these areas that are there as a result of this system?
Of the Caroline Pine system?
Well, I mean, whether we're talking about Caroline Pines, Lakeland, or, you know, yeah, are there other businesses that we've been able to locate within our county because of these systems?
I would say 95+% of the businesses that are connected to the sewer line would not be there if it were not for the public sewer system.
And so that's one of my concerns. We talk about making sure every individual pays his way. The fact is, we're generating tax revenue from many businesses in this county because those systems are in place. So they're not the only ones benefiting. And my point is, you don't have to live in the lake in order to benefit from the system, because tax dollars are going to schools, they're going to businesses, they're going to all kinds of entities throughout this county that we are benefiting from. And I just think sometimes we tend to forget that.
Right. And we currently are operating with the Ladysmith Water Company serving Lake Caroline underneath of an emergency agreement. The State Corporation Commission has issued their ruling that they must do a permanent agreement with Caroline County. They did not provide anything to us. We provided them with one. Once that is done, they will have to pay us an availability fee for their water. We believe that they'll have to have a minimum of a 6-inch line, which means that they would have to pay Caroline County $409,600 in an availability fee once that permanent connection is there. If it actually becomes to an 8-inch meter, it would be upwards of $800,000. We do not actually have the code to cover an 8-inch. That actually would be at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors to negotiate. But if you were to follow the current multiplier that's used, you'd be over $800,000 in availability fee for an 8-inch meter. So once that connection is permanent, once we are provided with the information on the fixture count of what size meter it would actually take to flow there, we still have an availability fee that we will collect once that goes to a permanent connection.
Joey, you were just talking about Lake Caroline.
That's correct.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. Lake Caroline is right now the owner. It's a private water company. Correct.
That's correct.
Right? I mean, technically, he still owns the system. I mean, we're buying bulk water, but he still owns his system in there, right? And about 2 or 3 years ago, they were drawing water out of their own lake. Is that not correct?
That's
how
correct.
they were getting. So if he were to sell that system to another private water company,
which he can do at any time,
and they were to fix up that system, we could not have a sanitary district at that point, correct?
we've had the sanitary district in place for over 18 years.
But we couldn't charge a
so
fee. We couldn't charge a fee, right?
Not if we were not providing a service, but you would just make that fee a zero fee at that point if that happened. I mean, the board would look at that every year just like a tax rate and determine whether they needed to increase that fee. It's not a set fee forever. It goes up and down as it's needed to maintain that system.
Okay.
And you have typically a capital project that's driving the funds created out of that that's paying that debt that otherwise the tax rate or the utility rate would not generate.
Okay. All right, let's get back to the rate. The Lake Caroline Sanitary District, or whatever it is that we talk about, bulk water sales, I think needs to be another conversation among board members here, and I think we need to discuss that sometime in the very near future. But I think we need to move ahead with this particular public hearing. The public hearing will be declared open on the proposed utility system rates for fiscal year 2012 and 2013. I don't believe anyone signed up for that particular public hearing. If there's anyone who would like to speak concerning this public hearing, please come forward.
George Parker, Mattaponi Voting District. The first thing I'd like to share is with regard to the water rates, mainly just a comment that I heard in my van pool driving home from work today. The comment was made by one of my neighbors. It's an awful lot of money for pretty crappy water. And secondly, thinking about all the rates and all the other funding issues we've been discussing, I started looking through the proposed budget as was published and found a good example of where this type of funding could have come from, so it wouldn't have to be discussed